thank you to everybody for coming. I'm very pleased. I'm actually very pleased because I can see lots of artists in the audience, and we're all here really to try to get Sokari to tell us what she's doing and why. It's like that question, isn't it? I'm very happy to talk to Sokari Douglas-Camp, who I'm sure many of you know, but I've written a kind of the tightest biography of you I could ever put together, I think, Sokari. I hope you don't mind it being so rushed. But Sokari was born in Nigeria, in the Niger Delta area, so the coastal area of Nigeria, and moves to Yoruba land, which is a different cultural area, for some time, and then comes over to England to study. You were 12 to 18, that's still small.
Yeah.
And then most of your education, most of your life, in some sense, has been spent in London.
Yes.
Since then, with obviously a huge admixture of Nigeria and family and so on and so forth. But I think this show is most interesting to me because of the way you've actually gone out even further and you're extending towards the Caribbean. And you're bringing Caribbean into Nigeria and England, and you're linking them in ways that to me are really fascinating. So I suppose the first obvious question is, I knew nothing about Jonkonnu, absolutely nothing, until Sokari announced that she was going to do an exhibition of Jonkonnu work. And I've known your work for, 25, 35 years. In fact, this is what I wanted to bring up first. It's kind of a little present that I thought I would. I don't know if you've seen this for a while, Sokari, but
what?
It's an African
Bit
sculpture.
loud.
Sorry, a bit loud.
Yeah, my mic's
African
a bit loud.
sculpture, and I want you to know what you think of the African artist who made this. It's I think it's a goose or
So
a.
funny.
What do you think of that? When Sokari did her first show at the October Gallery in 1985, is that right? 85. And a lot of it was kinetic work. And this, although you can't really see it, I don't think the battery has been changed for a few years.
Oh.
But this is one of those early pieces from 85, Sokari. You've seen this, but I think,
It's so
did you ever
shocking.
fix this? Is it shocking?
Yes.
Why? Why? So this is the early work, so it's much more valuable than anything you're doing these days. But this is, it was kinetic. It was meant, that's the battery, which goes in this little box. But it was meant to move. Jump. Do you remember?
It was. It's a chicken taking a bath.
It's
and
a
it goes
chicken
like that.
So and it would move and make noises and things, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah?
Very important.
When you look back at your old work, what do you think? Do you think
Mortified. No,
Sorry, I promised Sokari I wouldn't put her on the spot, and I've started.
yeah.
What do you think when you look at the early work?
I think I was mad.
You mean you've become more sane or less sane since?
Oh, a little more controlled, which is a pity, really.
Oh,
Yeah, I like this madness. Yeah.
Because this was, I mean, there were mad chickens everywhere in the.
That's the idea, because
there were chickens going around in this exhibition. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the main part of the show was a huge bed, as I understand.
yeah.
So again, it was a memorial, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it was.
Well, do you want to begin there and then we'll talk about Jonkonnu, or just I wanted to show this because I don't know how long it is since you've seen these, but this was picked up by somebody in that very first show in '85.
Wonderful.
And
What good taste.
what good taste! Absolutely, somebody who'd never heard of, Well, actually, the lady who bought it had been to Nigeria on a theatre tour. She was a very theatrical person, and this is one of her prized possessions, I think.
Sweet.
So we borrowed it back just to show you today. Mm. Between the chicken and the Jonkonnu, 35 odd years, I suppose.
Yeah.
Tell me about the Jonkonnu, where it comes from.
Well, we can start at the chicken.
Please.
The chicken was to put humour into play. And I was very interested in play, which is tea, which is Kalabari festival time. So we used to have these amazing shows in my hometown, in the round, outside, in what would be the town square. And you'd have serious masqueraders with, blood-stained aprons and swords and anklets that made noises and other kind of companion dancers going around the arena very, very seriously with a lot of noise and great audience, almost participation, because you'd sit with people and comment on who was dancing well, who was not dancing well, but you'd get the occasional goat that would just wander across the arena, or a chicken at the side taking a bath as all this entertainment, serious entertainment was going on. And I used to love that about home theatre, and it's the detail that sort of attracts one to looking at work, I think. So I think there's an element of that here. In that
the element of play is certainly still there.
Yeah, and detail.
Detail,
Yeah.
And also, as you say, the element of humour is that there's always something in your work. There's an irony, there's something that's looking for something a little bit fun, and it kind of increases the tension with the tragedy which also exists.
Yes.
Because I think that, for me, Sokari, that your works, for me, always, they're full of opposites, if you like. I see them as very balanced between tragedy and comedy, between internal and external, hidden things and things that are exposed. Because a masquerade, we talk about masquerades. Masquerades are about showing out. And yet at the same time, everybody is wearing a mask. So it's about being visible and hidden at one and the same time. Yeah? And I think of your work as kind of being like that, of having both of these almost opposite poles, and you hold them somehow in balance.
Yeah.
Balance is another thing. Let's go back to Jonkonnu, because as I said, until you told me that this is what you wanted to do, I'd never heard of Jonkonnu. And that's partly because I don't know too much about the Caribbean. I've been to Jamaica, I've been to Puerto Rico, but I don't know a huge amount about Caribbean culture. Do you have that Caribbean connection anywhere? You told me you'd been to the Bahamas once, is that right?
I've been to the Bahamas on a kind of recce to do a commission there, but it never came about. But I really enjoyed my stay, and I've been to Tobago and St. Lucia.
St. Lucia,
yeah. But, we live with Caribbean folk here in London. They're very kind of, they're all around me, actually. And sometimes I get mistaken for someone that comes from St. Lucia, and I don't. But, of course, there's a connection because of slavery. And I think that we kind of ignore that. I think since 2007, I've always, I kind of got more interested in slavery and did a huge piece trying to commemorate slavery. And the words that kind of stick with me are an ex-slave's words, which say, they will remember that we were slaves, but not that we were brave. And just in the community in Southwark, I've also come across a lot of Sierra Leoneans who had to run during the Civil War. And they introduced their journey of going to Nova Scotia, their ancestors going to Nova Scotia, and then from Nova Scotia being taken to Sierra Leone. And, joining my history and information together, Sierra Leoneans were folk that helped to do administration in Nigeria, helped the British to run Nigeria. So there's always been a tie, with this slavery thing, even in Nigeria. And then, as I talked to my grandmother and my mother, I discovered that, my grandmother had been, had come to the island of Bugma to be sold, which was amazing to me. And she had hidden, and my grandfather found her, and she was supposed to be very, very small and young, and he saved her from being sold. So in doing this research in 2007, a lot of things were brought up, and I realise more and more that I am connected to the Caribbean in the same way that, everyone is connected. Because we're all human, we're young, we're vulnerable, we're older and we're vulnerable, and, it's just the human tie. But black folk are connected because of this big thing of slavery. And during lockdown, it was amazing to be doing research about how I could exhibit my work. And there were kind of tensions because of the pandemic for sculptors, because of the COVID line that had to be followed. You couldn't perambulate in a gallery,
Yes.
especially because that was bad for health and safety.
Yes.
I thought, well, it'd be great to just kind of exhibit outside, or on a trailer, or on a float, because I was missing Carnival.
You're missing Carnival.
Yeah, missing Carnival. And then with missing Carnival and thinking of floats, I came across Balsario's watercolours on the net.
Yes.
And I just thought, wow, this is just so close to masquerading. And, the connection of slaves, the Caribbean, West Africa, the Caribbean, and all of that just seemed very, very clear to me that we had this connection. And you say that masks are to kind of hide you. I actually believe masks are when you become a spirit. So it's a spiritual celebration for me rather than hiding. There was a wonderful little kind of story by a writer competing for a small story award, and this writer wrote about something in the future. And in the future, we supposedly had cameras in our heads and things instead of in our hands. We could tap our heads and take a picture, And this person went back to Africa, and there was a ceremony going on. And in the ceremony, masquerades were dancing. A secret society masquerade was dancing and performing, and these kind of tourists hid in the bushes because they shouldn't have been at that particular ceremony, but they watched and they filmed. And when they got back to their kind of spaceship kind of, camping thing, they put on the film that they'd taken and tapped their head to get more focus. And as they panned in on the costume of this masquerader, they realized it was flesh. And, I think costumes, masquerading, detail, all of that, when it comes to these spiritual characters, it's very exciting. You can go many directions.
Let's talk about masks first.
Yeah.
So you're saying that you find these, I don't know if everybody has seen them, but these are lithographs done in the 1837, they were done, in Jamaica, in Kingston, Jamaica, by a very interesting man who was Portuguese Jewish family, born in Jamaica, comes over to London, spends time with his family here in London. Then, because he gets a bit ill, he has kind of pulmonary problems, goes back to Jamaica because the climate is better. And the question is whether he was, well, his Belisario is his name. Let's do Belisario. But he was obviously very close to what he was seeing. And he creates these 12 lithographs in 1837. This is after emancipation. But he's talking about this carnival called Jonkonnu, which they have had in Jamaica for probably about 180 years then. And so it comes out of the period of slavery. And they all dress up in these amazing costumes. And they only get holidays, I think, over Christmas. They're given 3 days of holiday a year. And the now emancipated slaves, so they're now free labourers, there's a difference, are continuing this carnival masquerade tradition. So this is one of the ones that you see, isn't it? There's only a very small one of the second one, which I wanted to get into the catalogue. But this one here, I want to talk a little bit about this one here. So Belisario does these 12 lithographs, and they're of importance today because nobody was taking photographs in Kingston, Jamaica in the 1830s. And they're so detailed that it's possible for specialists today to find details in these costumes that say, oh, this is a reference to something coming from the Congo. This is from the Yoruba. This is from the Igbo. They can find all these little details from what the 12 lithographs that Belisario did. So it's a fascinating little piece of retrospective piece. That's what
Caught me.
caught you.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What, as I understand it, you're saying is that when you see these, you see things that remind you of Kalabari masquerade
Yes.
and Yoruba masquerade,
Yes.
which are two of the great West African traditions of masquerades, aren't they?
And there's more.
There are many more. There are.
Yes.
Yeah. This is two that I know. And one of the reasons I know a little bit about Kalabari masquerades is, of course, because of you.
Yeah.
Because you've been producing a series of these wonderful Kalabari characters. Yeah?
Yeah.
You just said before tea as play.
Yes.
This is Alagba tea. It's that tea, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not Taifu tea.
No.
No.
It's tea.
Tea.
As Kalabari,
As a
which is
masquerade-
play.
It means play.
Yeah.
So drama.
Yeah,
play.
drama.
Yeah. So this one fascinates me for a start because anybody who knows their Frantz Fanon, is it black skin, white mask? This is one of the masqueraders who's an actor born. That's what it's called, actor born.
Okay.
He's a young black liberated slave, and he wears a white mask because he's masquerading as his mistress. So he's dressed in frills, a long frilly frock. He has a fan, and he has all these different things. Essentially, he's an element of parody, I think. He's given great power in the drama. He holds a whip. That's to keep people away. Again, it's something that you'll see quite often, I think, in masquerades. Yeah. People will keep the crowd away from the performers, as it were. And he holds a fan. And one of the reasons that he holds a fan, they say, is that it's so hot inside the mask that every so often he pulls his mask off and he's fanning himself. Which is why I love the fact you've got your fan there. He fans himself, puts the white mask back on, and goes back into white character. Yeah? So all this stuff takes place in a masquerade. And as you were pointing out, Kalabari masquerade is all done by men, isn't it?
Yes.
So again, you have this ambivalence.
Yes, but it's observed by women.
It's observed by women.
So,
Well, please, you describe it beautifully to us. Please tell me this one about do we have blue bustle painting too?
Yes.
The end one there.
Yes.
Tell me about that one.
Well, Kalabari women, women in their prime, when we appreciate our women, dress up layers of cloth that, come out a bit like almost like a tutu, except it isn't. It makes the bottom half of the woman almost barrel-like with the amount of cloth that is put around you. There's no kind of frame that it goes over either. It's just layers.
Just cloth and cloth.
Yeah. Okay. But it's the way it's folded.
Yes.
So it really comes out, and that is what that figure is. And I was very, very excited that the boy figure dressed in his mistress's clothes, I was very excited by that, because, men do wear women's clothes. Kalabari men wear wrappers, and they wear long dons, they're called, but it's a long frock, basically, when they're chiefs. So, I played here by making that particular piece a woman in her prime, but, there's no breasts, so it's a man, supposedly. And it's the fluidness of Jonkonnu that encouraged me to, be daring and have the thought that someone like that could be on a carnival float as a character, as a Jonkonnu-like character. And I also like the fact that Kalabari women, when they come from the creeks, they have kind of foraged periwinkles and oysters and all sorts of things, and they put it in a basket, and they have paddles that they have used for canoeing, and they sometimes put that on their head, and I just made it more elaborate and more crown-like, just because I could. And yeah, I'd say an awful lot of playing in my studio, just making up my own stories. But the idea is that the Jonkonnu with sort of high heels and the Kalabari Jonkonnu both have kind of twisted bits of cloth at their side, and that would be the Union flag. Yeah, and it's about the Britishness in us as well as the Masquerade in us that is in those two little pieces.
So this is you, as you were post Jonkonnu, creating your own Jonkonnu characters, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're continuing the Jonkonnu tradition.
I am.
As it were, by using Caribbean masquerade plus Kalabari background to interpret modern everyday life.
Yeah.
Tell me, because the reason I went to the Blue Bustle was your men doing the masquerade and women watching them hypercritically. This is what I wanted you to tell us about with that, because I think this is a lovely. The idea, as I understand it, is that you can imagine being a man playing a woman in her prime. It's a bit, Carol. It's like the World Derby. Young men who are, when they're going to try to find a wife, they dress up, I think, am I right, as women. And the women will choose the man who can best express what it means to be a woman. There's this strange ceremony, as it were. But I love this idea of, if a man tries to play a woman in her prime, you have to understand what a woman in her prime might be and how she moves, and the micro gestures of it.
Yes.
And the women will all be watching to see how well they do it, yeah?
Yes. Yes, and it has to do with kind of rhythm and poise and how they perform and how they dance and how they hold themselves. You have to do your best in an arena because you're being watched.
You're being watched.
You're not only being watched by the women, you're also being watched by whoever's up there.
By the spirits up there.
Yeah, so you just have to do your best.
Yeah. Are there any other, let's say, just to continue the fiction, what kinds of things would happen to a man who playing a woman character who just completely blows it and doesn't quite get it. What kind of
the disgrace that happens.
The
disgrace. If you don't play your part in a Kalabari arena is that you're undressed. Yeah, because you're obviously not a spirit.
Yes.
So it's really damning.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You failed.
Yeah.
How fascinating.
So you just the compound that you represent can't have that happen.
I was just to. This is my own little area. I've spent a lot of time filming Tibetan monks dancing, and the great ceremonies in Tibet are the monks incarnate the gods who come down to dance
for the people.
To dance for the people.
Yeah.
Any monk who doing these amazing spins and this hour-long thing, any monk who trips and falls,
yeah,
gets called up by the abbot, and he is not dancing ever again.
Oh wow!
Because he didn't because the gods don't fall. And the whole reason in the Tibetan world is that gods who dance. Why would a god walk like a human? Gods dance because how else can you imagine a god? The godlike movement is fluid and they fly. They don't. So anybody who falls is human and is out. So it's the Tibetan equivalent.
Yes, but also the trick is in Kalabari culture is that supposedly it was women that first saw masquerades in the creeks, and then they came home and told this town that they'd seen these amazing things on the mud flats in the creeks, and they performed what they saw, and then the men took it over. Yeah.
There's all kinds of
shenanigans.
There's all kinds of shenanigans. There are all kinds of rabbit holes you can go down.
Yeah.
I want to pull you back, just because. No, you see, I totally agree. But when you say that, if they don't do the iriabo, if they don't do the woman that well, then they are undressed. Because I would come back to say that dressing is itself has the same ambivalent qualities. That a woman dresses in her finest clothes, and meant to, so that they can be seen. So it's about covering up in some sense. But clothes are made to reveal. So there's this ambivalence in the layering of things that you are revealing by concealing. You see where I'm going?
Sort of.
Sort of. You only have to see modern fashion. There's about to be a big show at the Victorian Albert, which is called Africa Fashion, which is just about to start. And a wonderful curator is putting together all these ideas of all the different kinds of African fashion and how it's coming into the modern fashion world too, obviously. But you think of the way skirt hems move.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that you have a big, long, full flowing skirt, and then you go back towards the miniskirt, and way too much is shown, and then the gears reverse, and hems start dropping again, or cleavage, which apparently is making a comeback.
On men.
On men. Well, thank you. Well, thank you. Well, there's that gender fluidity.
Yes.
but that's my point. That clothes, in some sense, when used for dressing, are a way of covering what you're trying to reveal. No?
I don't.
You don't think so?
Not in this case. So much. Why? Because it's about spirits. It's about character and otherworldliness rather than this worldliness. And so I think that's why it fascinates me, because it passes fashion.
Okay. Yeah.
It passes fashion, and Kalabari masquerades are amazing to look at because they make themselves 7 months pregnant. So the, muscular boys make themselves 7 months pregnant, and it so happens that some of the costumes have tails, so it looks as if you're 7 months pregnant and have an erection. And the headdress changes the proportion of the human body because the mask is on top of the head rather than, where the human head is. So it's almost like the face of the dancer's the neck, and then and then the head's on top, kind of thing. And quite a lot of the masquerades, the ones that have faces, and my particular favourite was a hippo masquerade, and the carvers over the years combined human features and hippos' features, and they had this headdress for this particular masquerade, and it was to have a conversation with God, because the hippo, when he's kind of gliding along in the water to come and attack your canoe or whatever, he's fairly flat and kind of horizontal. And so the hippo masquerade, you only see his face when the dancer bends down. But it's to do with proportion and shape, and so that's the kind of costume mix experiment thing that happens when you're describing a god rather than fashion. And with the Jonkonnu work, I think I have gone into a lot of poses, and the main pose is imagining how slaves would have danced on the crossing from Africa to the Caribbean. And the reason I say dance is because slaves were brought out to exercise, and I worked with a composer a couple of years ago, and she'd written a piece about the woman who refused to dance. And so, just by working with her, I got more into my head about this journey that, Africans took to the Caribbean. And supposedly they put them on deck. And, when you communicate with people, even if you are a prisoner or whatever, things are exchanged. And I kind of have a feeling that Irish dancing must have been exchanged, because from Balsaria's drawings, it looked like people were doing, the Irish dancing where, their hands are kind of locked, and their feet, do the dancing or whatever. And I decided that was an interesting pose. If there was a dance sequence for a Jonkonnu masquerade, his arms should be locked as if he was kind of subservient or something, but his feet should be doing something extraordinary, which is kind of Irish dancing, really. And I just loved that idea. So I played away in my studios to how high I could get this thing to stand and still stand as a sculpture. With my bad welding and things, I just wanted to stretch the metal as much as I could to show this tension of being enslaved, but being free at the same time, almost. So it's a pose that has layers of conversation, really. So that's how this that came about.
And all of
Not him so much.
Well, we'll get to him in a minute. There are 1, 2, 3, and the one in the corner 4.
Yeah.
Showing what you're calling Irish dancing. I think of it as a sailor's hornpipe.
As a what?
As a sailor's hornpipe.
What's that?
A hornpipe. A hornpipe is a dance, the dance of the sailors.
Oh, right.
I mean, I'm sure that most sailors, there have been French sailors, there have been English sailors, there have been Dutch sailors, there have been European sailors.
Yeah.
There wouldn't have been too many Irish sailors, I'm afraid.
There were Irish slaves.
There were Irish
slaves.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe it came from the slaves.
But I mean, Irish dancing, I know what you mean by
Yeah,
dancing,
yeah.
But I think of this kind of dancing as a hornpipe. which is the dance that a sailor would do. Why do sailors dance in a very balanced way? Because they're dancing on ships, and ships will move.
Oh.
And so you never move your feet apart. That's how you get balance on a ship, is you drop your weight. But when you're dancing, you have to keep your feet quite close together, because the ship is moving too. So the hornpipe is this kind of dance.
Amazing.
For sailor. You see, I think you know all these things, but you just don't necessarily know that you know them. But I love, I mean, this to me, I did Irish dancing when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I hated it. But there you had to do it. So this kind of dance, as you say, is typically Irish in the sense that they, little kick here,
Bouncing.
Little kick there, bouncing. The thing you talk about, so this was in 2007 at the time of the bicentennial of the abolition of slavery.
No. The work that I did with Shirley Thompson.
Shirley Thompson, yeah.
It was 2017.
Oh,
2017.
It was 10 years later.
Yeah.
Because that goes back to an old. There's a famous Cruikshank cartoon of the girl who refused to dance being hauled up on deck and being upended and pulled up and whipped by which I think was what Shirley was referring to
was that.
Did you know that she was Kalabari? Did you know that?
Who?
The girl.
How?
The girl that whole thing that Shirley did the opera about, I think it was Calabar.
Oh, Calabar is a different part of the Delta.
Okay.
Yeah. So she was Effic.
Oh, yeah.
Effic. I'm not Effic. But
No.
same zone now.
Yeah.
Oh, shocking.
Because they know, because of where that ship was taking her,
Right.
that she was a shipment from one particular place, from Calabar out to Santa Lucia.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, okay, well, that's all.
That's amazing.
Let me get back then to, let's look at the dance.
Yes. Mad dance.
This one. It comes back to what I'm saying about this amazing sense of balance that I think you bring to these. Because as you just say, you have this huge, tall thing.
Yes.
Heavy steel.
Yes.
Shouldn't actually balance.
No.
But you're making it balance with just these two little welded points.
Yes.
Yeah?
And weight.
And weight.
Yeah.
Please take a look at the film in the other room of Sokari's working, because you make these all seem so light, and it's only when we see you working with pulleys and chains and this huge ungainly objects that one realizes that they're not things that stand naturally.
No.
This is powerful work, isn't it? This is heavy work almost, isn't it? You don't see it that way.
No, it's what is it? It's weights.
Yeah.
It's quite a lot of weight playing in making the work.
But when you put that on,
Balance.
you have to balance that, because that's added on. That's a whole thing added on top, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
That needs to be centered and balanced, and only then can you start welding it into place.
Yes.
But it could change the whole structure afterwards, couldn't it?
Not quite.
Not quite.
No, I wouldn't let it do that.
You wouldn't let it do that. So you've worked
That's
that
a
much out.
little bit too far. Yes, I if I was an engineer, it would be clearer. But I'm not. I'm an artist, and I feel my way.
Yeah.
And I've been working with this material long enough to realise that I can stretch things this far. Yeah. And it was very, very enjoyable to do that this year.
Do you get a sense of achievement when the thing
stands
delicately?
I'm in awe.
You're in awe,
yeah. I'm so surprised.
I think we're in awe too. But that's it. You give lightness to the heavy metal.
Yeah.
I want to throw another curveball at you then, because you this Irish dancing pose, which I can see, it has spiral in it, so it's strong. goes up to here, small. It reminds me of a piece that you did a long time ago, I think, in the crossed legs. And I don't know when, Stephen Lawrence,
Yeah.
your piece, which has, and again, the English flag also
Yeah.
flags that to me. Sokari did this rather wonderful piece. I've forgotten the title.
The Cross We Bear.
The Cross We Bear. There we go. It was just after Stephen Lawrence. So again, we're
Inquiry
talking,
at the Elephant.
Yeah.
My studio is near the Elephant and Castle.
That's right.
And so the radio was on all the time in my studio, and it was like the air was full
Of the Inquiry.
Yes.
Yeah, which was a terrible thing. And so, if I can describe it from memory, there's a frame, and in the frame is the English flag, Union
Yes.
Jack.
Yes.
And in front of the Union Jack, and on the Union Jack, there is a depiction of the head of Stephen Lawrence. So
Yes.
Everybody would recognise who it was, Stephen Lawrence. And in front of that, you created this dark, not quite the same technique, but a crucifixion, in fact, of a black metal figure, arms stretched. And the head of the figure, as you say, with the Masquerade, the Stephen Lawrence head is almost held on the head in the same sort of way.
Yeah.
The figure is smaller, the head is smaller, not important, but it's crucified. And the legs are crossed. Because in the crucifixion, the two feet were put together and Christ's feet were nailed together.
Yeah.
And it just for some reason, it tripped something with the flag and the crossed legs.
Gosh.
And what I'm again seeing as patience and suffering and bearing of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
And those crossed legs are not only bearing of weight, but bearing of suffering.
Amazing. You saw all that.
I see stuff in your work because I know you put it there, but you don't have to know that you put it there yourself. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
I do. And it's Jubilee, so I think somehow,
And it's Jubilee too, so.
somehow this stuff kind of came into the colours of this particular work, I think, without my even being conscious of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we still have bunting
We
around.
still have bunting around.
Yeah.
Coming back to the flag then, because flags again are this thing you've been using throughout, as it were. Obviously the Kalabari Masquerade figures, the hippopotamus, you don't have any British flags in those.
No.
This is the first time really, so the Stephen Lawrence one understands that there's something to do with British justice and the British Inquiry and the state of the country at that time. But here your flags are doing something slightly different.
I'm owning it.
You're owning it. Okay. Yeah, that's okay. That makes sense. Please say some more, and then I'll tell you what I read then. Because
Okay, well, I became British because I was born Nigerian, and my little green passport had difficulty everywhere whenever I travelled. So I decided that I would embrace being British with my children and partner. And then I used to look around at what was going on at the time. And there was the Stephen Lawrence Inquiry, but there was also Denise Lewis winning amazing races back in the day, and the Spice Girls, which my children adored, and Jerry wearing the British flag, and the Tony Blair era of Britain being cool and all that. Yeah, and so that's when I became British. So since then, it's been around me, and for some reason this year, this came back, and I think I am embracing being British more because, I'm a Londoner, very proud of living in Walworth, and, kind of saving gardens and stuff in the area and things. So this is part of my life. But, it does amaze me that, the black contribution is ignored, or when it does come up, like the Denise Lewis thing, it's such a big deal. But, we are here. We've been here since Roman times, and, I guess we should be appreciated, or if we can't be appreciated, we might as well just take the flag. so, so that's what I've been doing.
You make take the flag sound like take the knee or something,
Take it!
Take the flag.
It's ours! And I don't know.
The Union Jack
Yes.
was a flag that was actually supposed to be about multiculturalism. Because it was the flag of Scotland, and it was the flag of it was the George red and white, and it was the blue was the Sultan of Scotland.
Yeah.
So this is how you get it. So the Union Jack was actually about countries coming together.
Yeah. Well, look at it. I mean, tea and Jonkonnu.
Tea and Jonkonnu. Tell me about what I wanted to know about. Tell me about these colours here.
Oh,
because you're going from red, white, and blue, which I think people are getting.
It's just decoration.
Yeah, it's just decoration. Because I see kind of Jamaican colours. All these West African colours in there too.
Yeah, yeah.
Was that was just
decoration?
Decoration.
Yeah.
I see this very much as kind of Jamaican stuff.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Probably. Yes.
Okay, I want to talk about this one then, because we have it in front of us. There's this thing on the head, which again, this is why I wanted this particular one to be shown in the catalogue.
Yes.
You have to see this. It's a character wearing a white mask, big hair. So it's going to be, again, the same kind of actor boy, wearing a white mask with big hair, dressed as a man, with this flowing sash from his, around his waist. And on top of his head, he's got this thing, which is called a house. He's called House Jonkonnu. That's his name, yeah? And I said to Sokari, this is the thing I don't understand. Why are people going around with things on their heads? And Sokari, she's just saying it. This is a spirit world. These are spirits. They're interacting with another world, which of course is why I don't understand people with houses on their heads. So everything, in a sense, in the Kalibari Masquerade and the Yoruba Masquerade, the Gelede and so on, takes place in this object that's carried on the head, which is a kind of veneration, isn't it? You put above yourself the
It's almost like thoughts.
It's almost like thoughts. This is why you keep on talking about conversations in your head, isn't it?
Yes.
In this particular one, anybody who can see it can see it. There are, on top of the little house, because it's a house, on top of the house there are 4 feather things. Yeah? And here, Sokari's transformed them into sugarcane. But those 4 feather things go back to, you see on the house over there, on that house, you can see, Sokari's got 4 flowers. And on this one here, again, there are 4 little objects, little kind of, what are they, Sokari? Trees? What are they?
Tea bushes.
Tea bushes, good. Oh, thank you. Oh, I got it, yes, and tea bushes over there. In the original African context, those would have been feathers. Because 4 feathers is a sign of very high grade person capable of interacting with the gods, with the spirits. So these feathers are magicians, healers, chiefs, but the big spirit, the Nganga of the Congolese peoples, they would have feathers on their crowns. And the feathers, as here, the feathers on top of that mask mean that this is somebody who is in touch with the spirit world.
Isn't that wonderful?
That fluidity of feathers, that's all part of this constantly moving dance.
Amazing. Yeah.
And in Yoruba, they have this thing. I had some Yoruba friends. In Yoruba, they have this thing called Inle Ileri, which is the house that you carry on your head. So there's a Yoruba kind of background to it. Now, you take those and transform them into tea bushes and feathers, obviously. Feathers, by the way, just think of the Rio Carnival.
Yeah.
Feathers.
No, think of our carnival.
Think of our carnival. Let's get close to home. Let's get close to
Yeah.
home. Think of our carnival. Yeah. Feathers. It's all about feathers, and it's all about things that move too. Because these things, these sashes, again, you see on all these that you've transformed them into flags here, which I think again, Sokari, I love the way that you take a little detail and then you play with it. So this petticoat, which is being held here for the Iriabo, becomes a flag, a Union Jack, or here becomes a flag. She's transformed the petticoat of the original into an actual separate piece of separate object.
Yeah.
It's something to do with fluidity. Fluidity is something to do with the Godhead, something to do with the spirit world. And in the Congo, when you are dancing, as the shamans and they used to call them witch doctors, as the shamans and the Nyanga would do, they would always wear a raffia sash around them, so that as they danced, this sash would just keep moving, because it keeps the evil spirits out. The evil spirits get forced away, and the person dances with the connections.
Wow.
So again, you've got all these things there, and you transform them within the
Conversation.
your conversation. I love the way you use this word conversation. You transform them. Yeah.
Isn't it amazing that all of that travelled all the way to the Caribbean?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And gets held there.
Yes.
And that then you can deconstruct it 200 years later, 100 years later,
Yeah.
80 years
Yeah.
later. Yeah. Nearly 200 years later. You deconstruct, but you read the language, don't you?
Yes.
You know what this is about.
Intuitively.
Intuitively. Yes.
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 It was,
Which is why when you go to Carnival in Notting Hill, you're both remembering your Kalabari heritage, you're remembering your Kalabari heritage coming through that triangular.
Yeah.
That's culture. That's cultural transmission.
It's amazing.
And let's talk about the other thing then, is that you use the word conversation. You also continually talk about layering. I think when we think about and talk about the slave period, we all have our own little construct as to what that might mean. But it's so much more complicated, I think, than you have to be a real historian to begin to understand how people are coming out of Senegal, and people are coming out of Nigeria, and people are coming out of the Congo, and people are coming out of... So you have Wolofs and Mandinka, and you have Igbo, and you have Yoruba. And they might be princes who've just lost the battle for the throne. Mm-hmm. And they get sold out, and their next thing is they're in Trinidad. Mm. They might be working class people, they've lost the battle, they could be soldiers. They're a huge range of different people mixed together who have to put together a culture in a faraway place where they don't get time to make culture. 3 days a year.
Yes.
So this is a huge compression of so many different cultures, too, isn't
It is.
Layering and layering and layering and layering and layering.
Yes. But I think the main kind of layer is disobedience. Because art has this disobedience, and when you get the boy, whatever, dressed as his mistress, I just thought, that is it. You know, this thing of masqueraders coming out and telling off people or mocking the townswomen or the traders in in Lagos because they've come out as gelede and, you have bigger breasts than anyone could ever imagine, and bigger bottoms than the market trading women, and it's to mock them, and it's their sons mocking their mums. So it's that element of mocking and having the power of the gods to do so.
Having the power of the gods behind
that has come from all those cultures.
Yes.
Because I think, you were saying that in Roman times they used to
The Saturnalia.
mock the authorities and things, and it's that key of telling a story.
Yes.
Which I enjoy very much.
You like that subversion, that
I do.
That parody, is it?
I do.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Yes, you do. So I want to come to this one, because this, if I were to, Sokari, if I were to buy one, this is where I'd start. I think. It's got, as I see, all these themes running through it. But what really fascinated me was this Taifu and Tetley stuff. And the one behind you, we've got PG Tips. Nobody is spared. Yorkshire Tea are in there. Liptons are in there. They're all in there. And it's the tea bushes on top as the sacred transmission aerials. Tea has got nothing to do with the Caribbean. So your Jonkonnu has just gone global.
Yes.
Well, and so? But it happens here, I think, most remarkably, because the Caribbean was really about the sugarcane. The Caribbean was where the British got the white powder that fueled the 18th and 19th centuries.
Bad teeth.
Yeah. Bad teeth.
Yes.
Because that white powder gave them the rum, gave them the molasses, gave all the coffee shops in London, all the tea shops in London. And the tea came from the other side. You know, they like to talk about West Indians. Well, the East Indians were in slavery to produce this stuff. They were in slavery to produce the tea. Right. The Assami tea pickers. You look at the Caribbean, what happened in the Caribbean was pretty atrocious, and they took their captives from Africa to the Caribbean. But when you look at what the same flag bearers did to India, it was an even more, it wasn't as barbaric, but it was a far more controlled, operational, big business kind of. The East India Company ran India for profit. Mm-hmm. And it was all about tea. Tea was one of the things. So I love the fact that here you have these two little spoons of, the little spoon that stirs. Because it was a marriage of tea and sugar that gave the great drink, which becomes the absolute icon of British identity. Mm-hmm. Yeah? The cuppa cha. Cha, of course, is a Japanese word. Cha is the original Chinese cha. But the clippers coming into London full of tea, and the clippers coming in from the Caribbean full of sugar. Put those two together, and you had a massive economic boom on your hands. Mm. Because suddenly, first it began with expensive cups for the royalty and so on and so forth, and then everybody was drinking tea with sugar. The market was immense. Mm. And they stimulated each other, didn't they? Mm. Yeah. So your Jonkonnu, if I can paraphrase, bears witness to and accepts Britishness.
Yes.
As a marriage of two completely different kinds of masquerades. One West Indian masquerade, one Indian masquerade. And you have this almost bound character dancing on the, what was it, the angel dancing on, how many angels can dance on the head of a pin? Yeah, dancing and beautifully balanced in regal, splendid clothes, borrowed.
Yes.
And parodying the whole thing, even as he keeps his balance. Now, I think that the way you layer all those things together is stunning. And I don't know how you think about this. And I think you just think it's just all this stuff going on in your head, and this is what you get.
Yes.
But it's what can I say? It's almost as good as the early stuff. It's hugely complex thing.
It is.
Where did the idea of putting the sugar canes there come from?
It's 'cause sugar.
Just sugar.
Yeah, sugar, and it's a lovely shape as well.
But you've obviously realised that you have to have something on top.
Yeah,
do
because
all masquerade headdresses have that? I don't
no,
think so.
no, they don't. No, this is my own
This is your
concoction.
own, yeah.
Oh,
So you've got it from Belisario?
yeah.
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 So I love the way that you move from a two-dimensional image to these three-dimensional objects that take space. But at the same time that you paint and draw and decorate them so beautifully as well.
Thank you. I thought that it was important to put tea in this thing, and I'm not quite sure why. Except that, I love logos.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love logos. Why do I like logos? Because they're beautifully designed. I mean, Yorkshire tea is in the shape of a T. And something like Tetley has a border with a tiny leaf.
Tiny little, the small leaf.
Yeah, at the end of the sweep. Yeah, and PG Tips, the tips has a little tip of tea leaves, and all of that I think is amazing for decoration. But I think the shape of the boy's hat came from admiral's hats. Those strange looking admiral's hats, and which have a lot of feathers in them.
Yes,
yeah. So the whole thing was kind of elaborated into what we see as that house. And I think I remember that the British used to kind of be in houseboats in the Delta region, which kind of looked like that house.
The house on top of the house Jonkonnu.
Yeah. And so, it's between a house and a houseboat, and a colonial house.
Yes.
And colonial houses have nice clipped hedges around them, and you think of clipped hedges and you think of tea for some reason. So I thought that it was a good marriage, and added to the conversation. And the whole point of Carnival is that we are global. You keep on saying the West Indies,
I'm just using the old
West Indies.
The old term for it.
Yeah, and so it's global, and it's here in Notting Hill, and our children experience it every year, and it's the children in London that come from all mixtures that experience it, and it just seems like a perfect description of contemporary Jonkonnu. But we have gone as far as just wearing feathers now. So
in the festival.
Yeah, in the carnival. Yeah. So I'm not quite sure how to describe that, but every year my children and their friends just put glitter all over the house. So it's something I'd missed very much.
Well, I love the idea of, because it was the pandemic and the lockdown, that you have you're ready to go when the next carnival happens. You've got all the characters are lined up. You just have to get them out on the streets.
Yes.
You also have the same thing going out in Kensington and Chelsea Art Week, I think. This
week. I have two Jonkonnus tussling with
a flag. Is it?
Yeah, with a flag.
Yeah. And Sokari is also one of her earlier pieces, which I had tagged the catalogue for. You're on at the
V&A
at present. Sorry, the last page. There we go. This is an older piece of Sokari's, which is on show at the V&A at present, I think. So you're kind of flavour of the month
Yay!
Yay! And I'm going to stop talking and asking questions because I know that there are people in the audience who know quite a lot about carnival. And
Carol, who's seen a lot of the carnivals
Carol, who's seen lots of
Africa, and you and Charles Rochelle, who are very familiar with carnival here. And we just made over 200 pieces for the Jubilee celebration.
Amazing.
But Sokari, what I wanted to know is what was the momentum that had made you take up a torch, a welding torch? What decision?
That was so long ago, actually. It's a long time ago.
But it's not a usual thing. So there's an unusual woman taking up an unusual method.
No. I used to make these things, and the bigger versions of this, the electric motors that I used to use needed to be held, very firmly. Otherwise, they'd be really dangerous. So the college technician said that I should go on a welding course because I kept on asking him to make these frames for me. And he said, "You do it." So I went on a course when I was in Central, and I learned how to do that, to look after my own motors. And then my father died. And I made him a ceremonial bed, which I showed here. But, it helped with mourning, actually, to wear goggles and just kind of focus. And since then, I just haven't stopped because you can do so much with this material.
But it's a magic material because it's instant transformation. Hot, it's fire. Danger. It is very dangerous to do because if you don't wear goggles, you'll blind yourself.
No.
It's immediate. It's immediate.
I'm very health and safety conscious. But people get worried about steel. But I was having a conversation with one of your other artists during the opening, and I was saying, well, you do realise that it's mostly women that wear metal earrings. Yeah, we wear metal all the time, and then, I was thinking of my mother cooking with an open fire and handling bits of coal and shoving them back and hot pots and stuff. I think women have been playing with fire for a very long time. So I am careful in the studio, but I also enjoy it very, very much. So it's not so unusual.
I think I want to connect to this question because I was puzzled why you're using these heavy metals.
It's not
and
heavy.
What made you choose this particular element? And on the other thing is that how you transform actually something which is so heavy.
It's not heavy.
Light. But it looks heavy to me.
It looks heavy to you, but you're probably wearing jewellery.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not heavy. You can choose light metal, and I make a point of quite thin metal because I'm not a man. Because there's a tradition of men using, the bottoms of ships, Anthony Cairo, that thick metal, which, if you sneeze, it'll kill you, So I'm not going to work with that. No, I work with thin metal.
This is quite light.
It's quite light, yes. I mean, this stuff, although I have a winch in my studio, so I can lift quite heavy things. But, I do it all within reason.
And is it
I can
all
do it.
you do it, or you have some men helping you?
No, I generally work on my own.
Wow.
I generally work on my own, but for the last job that I did for Kensington and Chelsea Art Week, I had a young man come in to help me because it was useful to have 4 hands because we only had a month to make 2 pieces of sculpture. Yeah.
I had one more question. Can I ask another question? Maybe a comment rather than a question about the man who's standing there with the arms back.
Yeah.
Because it was so interesting what you said about the Irish dancing, but there is something about, for me, in that posture, something which is all about pride and strength and incredible confidence. And I was also reminded of a kind of sentence which a teacher of mine told me when I had to kind of learn moving again. Anyway, so she told me that the royal family goes around. Observe that. The royal family goes around and they put their hand back. And you have to move like that because that projects confidence and regal kind of posture. And I thought that is quite interesting how that is also in it, the defiance.
Interesting.
Yeah, I totally agree. Any other questions? Charles.
Thank you. I'm just curious because of this extraordinary link you have with Carnival through your work and Jonkonnu, and you mentioned Notting Hill. I'm curious to know if you actually play Mass with your children on, whether it's children or adults day.
Play what?
Play Mass.
Definitely not.
It's just through the figures, is it?
Yeah, because I still have a belief in magic. So yeah, I don't do things like this openly. It's wonderful to have the license as an artist to do it, but that's as far as I go. Yeah, it's going to take me a while to come out. Yes. Yes, there's a little bit of danger about it because I still have a belief in juju. Mm-hmm. So I can go so far with certain things. Mm-hmm.
Just a question that follows on from that: have you or have other artists or designers for Carnival taken up some of the imagery that you've created for costume?
No, this is all too fresh. It's new, so that's to come. Maybe. Well, give me a chance. Love to. Thank you.
My question is quite basic, actually. Is there a way in which you plan how you create your pieces? So, for example, if you're doing architecture, you make a plan, and then kind of like building from that plan. Is that how you work, or is it sort of channeling intuitively?
I do sketches.
Okay.
Yeah, I do line drawing things, and I start from the feet.
Oh, wow.
Mm.
So, I mean, then how would you know structurally that it would... I mean, architects and engineers, they do all this sort of forces and planning, and this is going to work because of the weights and measures and stuff like this, but the way that there is, it just looks like structurally those 2 feet wouldn't hold up the whole thing, but it works.
It's metal.
Okay. Right.
I dance with the metal.
Okay.
In my studio, yeah. But I do sketches, but then it's a dance in the workshop of making it balanced and putting more welds on and making it work from the bottom up.
Amazing. Thank you as well.
Thank you.
Well, if there aren't other questions, I'm sure we can have other questions. I thought there might be. Just one at the back.
So I just wanted to ask quickly actually about some older work, the Battle Bus, the Kenzara Wima, and I sort of slightly lost track on what the current status of that is, and maybe just sort of more broadly how you sort of think about the more direct literary engagement of a work like that to this work, with all of its cultural resonances, and where you see the connections or dissonances.
Good question. Probably people don't know about the bus here, but I made a memorial for the Nigerian activist and environmentalist Ken Saro-Wiwa, and it was a competition, and myself and another artist won, and I was able to make the work, and he wasn't. able to do it because of complications with the funds. But the bus was made and travelled in England for about 8 or 9 years, and plonked itself on different sites. But it was a memorial to this Africa's first environmental activist, writer, amazing guy from the Niger Delta. And I put his words on the bus, which said, "I accuse the oil companies of practicing genocide against the Ogoni. And Ogoni people live in the Niger Delta. My people are Kalabari. And in Nigeria, there's over 250 languages, even more dialects, so we're very diverse in Nigeria." And this memorial bus, after campaigning in England for 8, 9 years, was sent to Nigeria so that it could actually be in Nigeria, go to Bori, where Ken was born, and be there to keep up the campaign and the interest to keep the Niger Delta clean and clear. Even though oil is being taken out of there, we need to look after the land so that we can actually live there. And so we sent this thing, at least the commissioners sent this thing to Nigeria, and it was locked. It was almost disappeared. No one knows where it is. And this happened in 2015. And we discovered that the head of ports in Nigeria happened to be one of the judges that sentenced the Ogoni 9 to death. So the fact that this bus arrived with the words that said what they said, and with Ken's banner right at the front of it, was too much for this man to handle. So the activists on the ground went to Abuja, to our highest courts and things, to try to release the bus, and it's just locked. No one's seen it. You're not allowed to go into the port. If it still exists, nobody knows. I was worried about doing the commission when I did, because my family are tiny. They're not as important as Ken Saro-Wiwa's family or anything like that. None of us are campaigners or anything like that. And I was worried about making the bus, but I had been making pieces about the plight of the Niger Delta, just because my family are there and breathe the air that's being produced in the Delta. The flaring of the oil wells and things causes a hole in the ozone layer in Australia. So, this was a global thing. And what can I say? With the kind of blanket of the commissioners and things, I decided that I would go ahead with this thing, but I don't stick my head above the parapet very often. But this work here, I suppose, is a consciousness thing as well, in that, I want to talk about the flag's global heritage and the flag's global sins, and how we enjoy these global sins, and the strength of the people that took African culture to the Caribbean, and the strength of black people, just because that's what I am in London. And, and I'm very proud and happy of my life in London. So the two things aren't that far apart, in that I'm talking about the globe and our environment and how we're living. And yes, I care very much about my family breathing bad air in Nigeria, but I also care about my children's place in England here. So that's how it is. Yeah.
I'm going to leave the last words to Sokari. Look around the show, look at her work. Sokari, thank you.
Thank you.